It was the end of April 2023 when Elena, a 32-year-old mother living in the quiet town of Parma, Italy, made what she thought was a careful decision. She had just returned to work after maternity leave and needed someone to look after her 2-year-old daughter, Sofia. Like many modern parents, she turned to a local online classified site. Among dozens of profiles, one stood out: Julia, an 18-year-old student offering part-time babysitting services. Her profile seemed sweet, polite, and trustworthy, and most importantly, she lived just 15 minutes away. After a short phone call, Elena agreed to let her watch Sofia a few days a week. It was meant to be a temporary arrangement just until summer. During the first 2 weeks, Julia came over only twice, citing school and family issues. Elena was understanding. She's young, she told herself, and Sofia seems fine after each visit. But something didn't sit right. There was a new anxiousness in Sofia's behavior, a hesitation around strangers, and a refusal to be left alone in her room. Still, Elena chalked it up to toddler mood swings, the kind every parent learns to live with. But then, everything changed. In 2023, a growing number of Italian families turned to social media and online ads to find childcare. It was quick, convenient, and for many, the only affordable option. But for one mother in Parma, that decision opened the door to something far more disturbing than she ever imagined. Elena, a single mom juggling 2 jobs, thought she had found help when she hired an 18-year-old student to babysit her 2-year-old daughter. The girl was young, polite, and seemed like someone who just needed a little extra income. But within days, Elena began to notice changes in her daughter's behavior, small at first, but growing. Restlessness. Silence. A look in her eyes that no toddler should wear. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Then one night, scrolling Telegram, she saw a video. And her world collapsed. Hit like, subscribe, and let's go. Elena had built a quiet life in the outskirts of Parma. Her days were filled with routine: early morning coffee, a brisk walk to the bus stop, 8 hours at the local pharmacy, then home to her little girl, Sofia. At just 2 years old, Sofia was the center of Elena's world, bright-eyed, playful, and full of questions only toddlers know how to ask. Their evenings were simple: pasta for dinner, a cartoon or two, and bedtime stories told in a soft whisper. Life was far from glamorous, but it was theirs, honest, steady, and peaceful. Still, like many working mothers, Elena carried a constant weight: guilt. Guilt for not being there every hour. Guilt for needing help. So when she finally found a babysitter who seemed trustworthy and kind, she felt relief, maybe even a bit of hope. But sometimes the calmest waters hide what's just beneath. It was a Wednesday afternoon when Elena first noticed something unusual. She came home early from work, a rare half-day, and expected to find Julia reading or playing with Sofia. Instead, the apartment was oddly quiet. Too quiet. Sofia was sitting alone on the floor, hugging her favorite stuffed bear, while Julia scrolled on her phone, barely looking up. There were no toys out, no signs of play. When Elena gently asked how the day went, Julia offered a quick smile and said, "All good," she was just sleepy. That night, Sofia refused to go to bed. She clung to Elena's shirt with both hands and didn't want to let go. It was strange, not alarming, but enough to make Elena pause. Was it just a bad day? Or something more? She brushed it off for now. But the question stayed with her, lingering like a faint shadow. Over the next week, little things began to add up. Each time Elena came home, Sofia seemed more withdrawn, quieter than usual, avoiding eye contact, flinching at sudden movements. One afternoon, Elena noticed a small bruise on her daughter's arm. She must have bumped into something, Julia said casually before heading out the door without much explanation. And then there was the bedtime routine. Once filled with giggles and silly songs, it turned into a struggle. Sofia started waking up at night, crying out in her sleep, sometimes whispering words Elena couldn't make out. At work, Elena found herself distracted, checking her phone constantly, wondering if everything was all right at home. She wanted to believe it was just toddler behavior, a phase, maybe. But deep down, a mother's instinct was stirring. Something felt off. And yet, without proof, what could she really do? The turning point came late one evening when Elena's cousin sent her a message on Telegram. "Is this Sofia?" it read, followed by a blurry, grainy video. At first, Elena couldn't believe what she was seeing. The footage showed a young child, her child, sitting in a corner while a voice behind the camera scolded and mocked her in a low, impatient tone. The video had surfaced in a local chat group known for exposing unethical behavior. It wasn't violent, but it was cold. Detached. The voice sounded eerily familiar. Elena's hands shook as she replayed it. Again and again. She paused on a frame and saw the edge of her hallway rug. This wasn't somewhere else. It was her home. That night, she didn't sleep. By morning, she'd made up her mind. She installed a small camera in the living room hidden between books on a shelf. She needed answers. And this time, she would get them. The footage from the hidden camera left no more room for doubt. Elena watched in stunned silence as Julia entered the room, barely acknowledging Sophia. Her tone was sharp, her words cold. "Stop crying, be quiet, you're annoying." At one point, she snatched a toy from Sophia's hands, tossing it aside with a sigh of frustration. It wasn't physical abuse, but it was emotional neglect, and it was happening under Elena's roof. The worst part wasn't the words, but Sophia's reaction. She didn't cry. She didn't protest. She simply froze, her little shoulders stiff, her eyes fixed on the floor, like she'd learned this was safer than speaking. Elena felt the heat rise in her chest, not just anger, but guilt. She had let this happen. She had trusted a stranger. And now her daughter was the one paying the price. Elena sat at the kitchen table with her phone in her hand, the recorded footage ready to play. Across from her, Julia smiled politely, unaware. Elena had asked her to come early, pretending she needed to discuss scheduling. But her heart was pounding. She knew what she'd seen, but confronting an 18-year-old girl accusing her of emotional abuse wasn't simple. What if she denied it? What if no one believed Elena? She had no official proof, no bruises, no injuries, just a video, a mother's instinct, and a child who couldn't yet explain her fear. And then there was Sophia, quietly watching from the hallway, thumb in her mouth, wide eyes fixed on the scene unfolding. Elena looked at her daughter, small, fragile, trusting, and made her choice. She pressed play. What happens when you trust someone too soon and they break that trust behind closed doors? Julia didn't deny it. Her face changed the moment the video played, from surprise to defensiveness, then silence. She grabbed her bag and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Elena sat frozen, unsure whether to feel relief or fear. What if Julia retaliated? What if the authorities dismissed it as not serious enough? The next day, Elena filed a report, but the process was slow, full of paperwork and uncertainty. Friends offered sympathy, but some asked, "Are you sure it was that bad?" That question hurt the most. Meanwhile, Sophia remained quiet, more attached than ever, refusing to be left with anyone but her mother. Elena feared she had failed her daughter in a way she could never fully repair. But then, one evening, as they read their favorite bedtime book, Sophia reached out, placed her tiny hand on Elena's cheek, and whispered, "Mama safe." It wasn't everything, but it was a start. In the weeks that followed, Elena took careful steps to rebuild trust and safety for Sophia. She found a new caregiver recommended by close friends, someone with a gentle, nurturing presence. Elena also joined a local parents' support group where she shared her story and found strength in others who had faced similar struggles. The legal process moved slowly, but Elena's determination never wavered. Most importantly, Sophia began to smile again, her laughter returning like a fragile spring after a long winter. For Elena, the experience became a harsh lesson in vigilance and resilience. She learned that trusting others is necessary, but protecting those you love sometimes means facing uncomfortable truths head-on. As a mother, she grew stronger, more aware, and more determined than ever. How would you handle a moment when trust is broken in your own family? Months later, Elena's life had settled into a new rhythm. She remained vigilant but less fearful, learning to balance hope with caution. Sophia thrived in a safe, loving environment, and their bond deepened in ways Elena hadn't thought possible after such a painful ordeal. The scars of betrayal lingered quietly, but they no longer defined their days. Elena often reflected on how easily trust can be misplaced, especially when life demands quick decisions and compromises. She wondered how many other families faced similar invisible struggles, afraid or unsure how to speak up. If you were in Elena's shoes, how far would you go to protect your loved ones? And what would you do if the person you trusted most let you down? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.